Hi, I'm Stephen Orr, and today we're going to talk about tabletop dish gardens. And to me, it's one of my favorite ways to garden indoors. It's so simple, it's really inexpensive. It's just a really great way to use houseplants in a new way. Dish gardens were really popular in the 1970s. When I was a kid, you could see books that would have a lot of examples of dish gardens. One thing they're known for is making kind of almost a landscape out of your houseplants with some natural elements. This is one I've made myself that I've had for about 2 years. And as you can see, it is like trying to mimic kind of a little bit of a landscape. This is like a mossy kind of forest landscape or almost like some sort of jungle area. What I try to do is pull moss together. You can buy it from a store. I've even gone out in the back. I have a mossy area in my lawn where it doesn't drain very well, and I just scrape that moss off and use it in my dish garden. And these are very low maintenance. All you're using, the base of it is, of this one, you can use any container. This one is a dish for a large pot. So it's the saucer that goes at the bottom of a large houseplant, and that's just a really easy way to buy them. They're inexpensive. For several dollars, you can buy this beautiful piece of pottery. I like them to keep them low so you can really see the landscape. This one has one tall plant in it, and then a lot of low growers, some that kind of spill out. And then I've added just little bits and pieces. These are rocks I've picked up from my travels or, you know, on a hike or something, bits of granite, and then you just kind of make a little landscape. So it's very easy. So I think of them in two groups. One group is the kind of wet, more mossy garden, and then a very dry or arid cactus or succulent garden. So those two types are really how I think about them, and both of them work really well with a couple of adjustments. The mossy garden, in fact, like this one you can see, is almost all moss. So this is more almost like a Japanese garden where you're kind of really celebrating the beauty of the moss. You can get all sorts of different kinds of moss, this cushion moss, ball moss, sheet moss. And when you look at all the different colors and shapes, you can kind of make like a little tapestry in the garden here, in the pot, make a little garden. You can add a found piece of driftwood or something you found in the forest. And then you just put even just one plant, like this maidenhair fern. So when you're watering, you could do it where it has a hole in the bottom. I can see that this one has a hole in the bottom. My dish garden over here doesn't have a hole. So what I do is about once a week I take it and I put it in the kitchen sink and I fill it so that the water fills it, let it sit for a little while, and then I kind of tip it and let all the water drain out. And then I put it right back on the kitchen table. So it lives on the kitchen table all the time. So it just couldn't be easier. To talk about the dry gardens, we're going to make one. This pot, which we thought would look nice with the cactus collection we have here, but if you have a favorite pot like this one and you really want to use it for your dry garden, you just need to be aware of two things. One is to put gravel in the bottom, which we're going to do. It's going to be a little noisy. Now, for this, I would probably just use ordinary pea gravel. This is more decorative gravel that you can buy at a nursery. But you know, you're burying it a little bit, so it just depends on what's easier for you. But since you're burying this, you don't really need the decorative garden. So then you put on top of it a layer of soil. You want the soil, it's almost like making a cake, a layer cake. You do a layer of pebbles for drainage. Even if you had a hole in the bottom, the pebbles would help with the drainage. In this case, what you're going to do is make sure you have enough pebbles so that the cactus are not sitting in any water, and you're going to want to make sure you drain off the water after you irrigate it. So for this one, I'm going to put on my gloves because working with cactus can be painful, especially because these little tiny ones are almost the worst because you can't see them. You don't really know they're in there until later, and they start to irritate your skin. So we're going to take this one, this beautiful cactus. It has a little flower on it. You just dig down a little bit. When you're planting these, you're just trying to get them to a good height that mimics the height that they're in the pot. So I'll put that guy there. It's always good to do a variety of heights. This one will be a taller cactus. Now with all these guys, when you're working with them, any of these plants that outgrow their container or outgrow the pot, you can definitely just transplant those out as they get too big. Like this guy could be a house plant that ultimately could be 5 feet tall. But it's actually stayed pretty dwarf in this container for all these years. So I don't know how long it'll be happy here, but if it starts to look unhappy, I might take it out and repot it and replace it with something else. If you don't like dealing with these spines, the other technique would be to use succulents, because succulents obviously are non-spiny, they're much easier to work with. You can see that I've arranged it so that things are not too symmetrical. I have these a little closer, this guy off to the side. You know, if I want to, I can add a stone for additional interest. The other thing I might do is add this grit. You can buy this sandy grit at a nursery. That's like the top dressing. It also makes the cactus happy because then the leaves aren't touching soil, or any part of the plant isn't really resting on wet soil, it's resting on dry, crushed stone. So that makes the cactus a little happier. And if you want to, you can go ahead and add the decorative gravel around 1/2. I'm a messy gardener. And I think this one probably would need a stone, so I would add like a stone there. I'm pulling from my other one, but you can bring your own stones and then put another stone here. I think anything that makes it look like a little bit like a desert landscape will be really pretty. And then if you need to touch it up with more grit, you can do that. Once you're done with this, I would water it, but with the dry one, I would water very sparingly. I would use just like a glass of water. I wouldn't really put it under the sink. I would probably just douse it with a little water, and then once in a while I would kind of tip it out, hold it in and kind of tip it out and make sure there's no standing water. And so when you're buying and looking at cactus to buy, you know, when you see something like this where it's a bit yellowed on the base, that means it's probably been overwatered, so you might want to find another one. Also, when you're looking at the roots, a big amount of roots, unlike other plants, may look pot-bound, but to a cactus, that's actually a good thing. So that's another thing, a buying tip when you're trying to look for cactus and succulents. So that's about as easy as it goes. You can use any sort of arrangement of cactus, any succulents for the dry, and for the wet, you can use any ordinary houseplant. One thing I like about doing these little dish gardens is that you have those little tiny houseplants that are sold in a lot of different garden stores or in a big box store. They're very inexpensive, just a couple of dollars. The fun part is, like with this one I've had for 2 years, you can just keep editing it and changing it up however you want to over time. You can put this in any room in the house, basically. These guys like more indirect, bright indirect, normal houseplant light, whereas these guys need sun. So if you're doing cactus especially, they want pretty much as much full, bright sun as you can give them. Succulents, slightly less, this even less. So anywhere in the house, could be a kitchen as this is, could be a living room, on a coffee table, and it could be in a sunroom. It's just a piece of movable decor. And the best part about it, it couldn't be easier, and it's like a miniature landscape you can have right in your own house.